Got this.
And we are live. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Alien Investigations, a channel dedicated to the X-Files collectible card game. I'm your host, Steven, and I've got a full panel of esteemed guests here who are going to be helping us out with this ongoing discussion regarding the pre-premiere, pre-GenCon playtest cards that make up the earliest iterations of some of the X-Files CCGs cards. As you may have saw in the previous episode, we covered agents, adversaries, X-File cards, and witnesses. And for tonight's episode, we're going to be looking at the sites and events. And there's a lot of good ones in there to talk about, to digest, because there's some a lot of cool alternate effects. There's a couple of cards that we play with routinely that we deem fairly powerful, but some of their early versions were even more powerful. So that'll be something to take in. There's also going to be some situations where we'll have an activator called Flash, which we have not seen before either, which hopefully we might be able to put our heads together and come up with an interpretation of what that was.
Magic.
And
It's magic, man. It's
magic.
Flash
Okay.
Instance. Bring it in. Bring it in.
Free magic. Don't ruin it. Keep suspense.
Well, that's one mystery we can solve right out of the gate. So I'm gonna
skip that one.
Boo. Come on.
All right. So thanks to Nancy Drew down here. That would be Dave Meyer, who's joining us from Illinois. Dave, I want to thank you very much for availing your time on this Friday night. And of course, again, thank you for solving that first mystery of many. And let's see how you fare against some of these other cards that I'm going to be showing. We've also got Guillaume.
Let me break all the suspense for all of them now.
I'm going to break the whole game before we're done tonight.
Hey, I'm a detective, man. I'm a detective. That's what I do for a job. My work is all finding problems and fixing those problems and fixing them fast. So there you go.
And the best part is Detective Dave is alliterative, so go with it. And we've got Guillaume joining us from France here at the crack of dawn. Guillaume, good to see you. And of course, you got your cat, Cholera, who is just nuzzling up against you. And of course, I'm sure he's just as anxious to see some of these cards as well, right?
Oh, he is, yes.
And right over here, we've got my co-hosts on Matt, Mike, and Steven's X-Files CCG, Mr. Mike Perrine. Yes, Mike, good to see you. You're all the way over in Oregon, and not shoulder to shoulder as we appear to be on this stream. So, Mike, you were part of the last episode where we were looking at some of the playtest cards. Tell us what you're most looking forward to for these ones.
Well, the two specifically, because we're doing you said events and sites today, right?
Yep.
So I guarantee you can guess which two I'm referring to right off the bat that we want to talk about.
So.
But I'm also curious. I haven't seen a lot of these, obviously, because they're premiere. Not a lot of people have seen them. I'm curious about cards like hacking the government files, if that was any different, I had heard that a friend in the FBI was different, but I don't know. So, but we're all going to find out, man. We're all going down this wonderful journey together.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think we have friend in the FBI unless my set is incomplete. That one's not in there, but I can tell you hacking government files is, and it's going to come up kind of closer to the end. But last but not least, I also want to introduce the most esteemed of our panelists here. We have Mr. David May, former employee of the United States Playing Card Company when the X-Files CCG was in production. Previously playtester, also worked nearly every rung of the ladder at USPCG while the X-Files CCG was in production. He was the last man out the door when this game was discontinued. He was penning a third edition for this game when it was canceled. So if anyone is suited to talk to us about some of these cards, it is Mr. May. And as a playtester, so he is he's familiar with them in that these were what he was using back when the X-Files CCG was still in its conception stages. So Mr. May, you know these cards, you've seen them, you've played with them, so you'll be hopefully be able to give us some insight as to what you recall. I know we're asking to recall 30 years ago, so understandable if not all of the memories are quick to show up. But any insight you give us, sir, much appreciated.
I hope to be just as surprised as you all are.
And yeah, maybe, and if you recall any instances of like certain cards that you did, recall from your time playtesting it, please feel free to let us know. And with that, I'm going to bring in the 6th camera, which we'll be using to take a closer look at these cards. Not Mike here. No. We're here for the cards, not for Mike. Okay. So, guys, how's that looking?
Focus.
Pretty good?
Focus.
Focus? All right, let me...
Focus.
Can never go wrong. Look at that. Contrast.
I feel like I'm back in high school.
A little better?
Slideshows.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the overhead projector thing.
Yep. Yeah. All right. A little more, little less. A little more, little less.
Yeah.
All right. Light up a little. That's probably too washed out. All right. So leave it at that. If anyone who's tuning in for this in the live chat, please let us know. If you're able to see them, I think this is probably as good as it's going to get. But as you can see, we are looking at some text-only cards, just like in the previous episode. So these cards are just strictly bare bones in that they're giving us just the information that is planned for the cards. And so what I want to point out as we're going to be going through these, note the primary and secondary text here at the top. That's going to indicate an alpha card. This was the earliest iteration of the playtest cards. And then for the other ones that you don't see primary, secondary, you'll be seeing the costs like resource or conspiracy points. Those are the beta cards. Am I correct on that, Mr. May?
Correct. So, and again, just as a quick reminder, the origins of the game, it's going to come up a couple times again. But the inspirations, obviously, for the game itself is X-Files, but the games that we have to keep in mind, of course, Magic, the Godfather, and that'll come back up. And yeah, we'll talk about timing mechanisms, because even when this came out, they hadn't figured it out at Wizards yet either, right? We'll go back to the ancient instant and interrupt speeds, which messed with everybody's head. So, and then secondarily, we've also discovered that because Next Games prior to X-Files worked on both Red Zone and Top of the Order, that there was a randomization mechanic, right? So despite all your efforts, you could still be thwarted by randomness, which did carry over initially, but was, ultimately left behind as it wasn't necessary mechanically, probably even, again, more laborsome towards what we ultimately have today. And so that revision, our change was made early on for Brian Woodward, myself, and our team of playtesters. We came in right at the tail end of the alpha playtest session. So even though we did receive some cards, we weren't required necessarily to give feedback on that iteration, because they had already internally, down in La Jolla, they had already kind of figured out they wanted to go in a slightly different direction. But again, as far as the assembly of the cards, the screen grabs, things of that nature, and again, for this group specifically, because of the interest in what would have happened, and the creation of our own cards, and so there's a lot of different ways to get a card. One can be, mechanical. And when we talk about mechanical, not just to perpetuate the game, such as the sites that we're looking at. And again, I tip my cap to this design element. If there was anything close to it back in the day, we've talked about when we were kids, going to the store, and there was, of course, Magic, but There was also Star Wars and Star Trek. So locations were coming in. Of course, has nothing to do with this game, but before I forget it, Netrunner. So there were other collectible card games that really would ultimately use kind of the site location to take skills and apply. Of course, the greatest gift, I think, was the checklist, the X-Files themselves, and the attributes, which we've covered. So you wanted, of course, design cards around those core mechanics, but you also had to design cards around what we're just going to call the basic functionality of a collectible card game. And what do I mean by that? Hand management, card management, of course, resource management. And so when attempting to design these things, kind of pulling a little bit from column A and column B. And so, like I said, the alpha was doing more than it needed to. And so it streamlined into what would be beta, which other than balance, and again, as we'll get into what the coulda, woulda, shouldas on the mechanics, right? And how some things may have seemed more powerful, or we knew we wanted that mechanic and things had to move around, which that could have been influenced by playtesting, but really just a function of balancing. And of course, we'll get into that in more detail. So I'm out of the way again.
Yeah, and so I'm going to start us out with a couple of cards that had not been translated to commercially released cards when Premiere was released. So these are site resource cards, or resource sites. And so these ones here are specifically used by the investigating player. And as you note by the costs up here, and these are beta cards again, because we're not seeing the primary and the secondary text going on. So these came in the beta stage, because at the time the alpha was going on, resource points and conspiracy points weren't a thing. There was a different point system going on. And so I want to note here that these two cards, again, that did not make the final cut, Witness Protection Program and Mobile Armory. Hopefully you guys are able to see these. So these resource cards, which remain in play over multiple turns, are played in the field during the case assignment phase. And in the case of Witness Protection Program, you can place any of the witness cards underneath this one, and then up to 3, that is. And these cards may remain under that card, and during the investigation phase, you can pull them out and store them. You may play the cards stored under this card on any site in the field for -2 costs to the witness. I guess it would be up to 2, because there were a number of witnesses that only cost 1 RP. So the owner of this card must pay 1 RP during his case assignment phase, or this card and all cards beneath are discarded. So I guess there was a bit of a maintenance payment for each one, which is kind of reminiscent of that Lone Gunman card, the ultra rare we had with the Premier Edition. So, but these are also, as some of you who've dabbled in 1013, it might recall, we have the cards like the Men in Black ultra rare, the Amaru Urn, which also allowed for conspiracy cards to be stored under their bluffs and adversaries specifically. So these cards are sort of a variation on a theme with regards to that. The Mobile Armory allows you to place equipment cards underneath there. As I said, the Witness Protection Programs for witnesses. So we have each of these cards provide storage for different suits, which is great, because oftentimes at the end of the turn, when we enter debriefing phase, we often have to discard down to 7, and there's some cards we just don't want to bear letting go. So these often might prove a useful resource, hence the name for that. 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, what are your thoughts on these 2 cards?
What I really like about the Mobile Armory is that it allows you to bypass the bureau activator. It says that equipment that is not normally playable in the field, you can play that. There is that specific note, so I think that's good. I don't know. I was thinking about the cost and if I would be inclined to use them. I think they are useful, but maybe the 4 RP plus the 1 RP that you have to pay each turn. I don't know. I guess maybe for equipment, I wouldn't be too inclined to use them. For witnesses, it could be really useful. But what I'm really curious about is those two cards being sites as opposed to events, which I think they would be better suited for. And even if you look at the templates for the site cards, there is not that much room for that much text. So unless they were supposed to, I don't know, be a different template for those specific cards, because also on sites you don't have the green X in the upper left corner because there is no room for it because of the tag where the title of the card is. So, and those two cards would definitely have the green X on them. So I'd be really curious to see some sort of finalized version if such version exists. But for the effect, I don't know, I like it. I think it could be useful depending on what you want to include in your deck. If you want to have an equipment heavy deck, you could have that card and it would be useful. And if you have the witness protection program in addition to manners, you know, really useful for witness heavy decks.
I have to also imagine, and it's a shame David Peace isn't here with us, that these two cards might have also been very handy for the Field Office Crime Lab, which, from what we know of it, would have entailed the use of witnesses and equipment to turn in at that portion of the table in order to translate that into whatever the benefit that came from using the Field Office Crime Lab. So this might have been a useful card to have. Like you, Guillaume, I also am thinking about the cost of it, which if you compare it to like the Travel Plans card from the Scully set, which I think costs 2, and I think even the Men in Black maybe only costs like 3 CP. So,
6,
but then again,
Men in Black is 6.
Yeah,
6. Oh, I take it back then. Yeah. Or what about the Amaru Urn? Same thing, or
I didn't pop Amaru here. Yeah, I forgot Amaru also did the same thing.
Yeah, with adversaries.
Amaru
But
Urn,
it's a cost of 3.
3.
Yeah. So adversaries versus bluffs, but I suppose
but it makes sense because Amaru Run, it's only for occult adversaries, right?
Yep, only if
that's
the
right.
adversaries
Yeah,
and you can claim as blue.
very limited.
That's
Okay.
it.
So that was probably a factor in it as well. But also want to show you guys some other cards that did not make the cut along the same lines. So those, as I said, were the resource site cards used by the investigating player. Now here we have some of these that are going to be used not by the investigating player, but rather the conspiracy player. So these would be conspiracy resource sites. And so here are 3 of them here. Hopefully you guys can see them. Primordial Lair, which is drawn from the Jersey Devil, and Alien Colony from Genderbender, the episode with the Amish-like sect. And lastly, Hidden Nest, which is taken from Toombs' locale where he hibernated every 30 years. So some very interesting ones there. So again, they have a very similar effect in that you're able to place 3 cards beneath them. For the Primordial Lair, it's Primordial Adversaries. For the Alien Colony, it's Alien Adversaries. And for the Hidden Nest, we're looking at Evolutionary Adversaries, which corresponds to the affiliation of those particular Monsters of the Week characters. So you're looking at a 6 CP cost for these. And actually, looking at all of them, they were slated to be ultra rares at the time because they actually did have rarity somewhat figured out by the time they got to beta. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on these conspiracy resource sites as you're looking at them and thinking, yeah, we saw some with that with 1013, but these are kind of running the gamut with the adversary cards. How useful do you think they would be in a deck that you'd be playing with?
I mean, they're cool. I've actually got a secondary monitor over here that's like way bigger than I'm like looking into. That's why I keep going back and forth. But they're cool, but it's I think they're more of the niche cards as far as like you have to build a very, very specific niche deck around them. Man, I mean, like I play with an alien deck. Most people know that, but I don't just have alien, adversaries in my alien deck. Man, so let's see. So basically, you have to keep it's an upkeep.
Yep. Which is 1 CP as opposed to, I think, the 2 CP the 2 RP that was for the
and
no, it's 1 RP for the other ones. Never mind.
Okay. Yeah. So 2 CP less, or 2 less CP, and gain the activators necessary to play on the site. So basically, you could, So I mean, that's kind of cool because it throws that in there. All of a sudden, your opponent plays an affiliation site. Well, I don't need that anymore. I've got a alien adversary under here that I can play for 2 CP less that ignores that requirement. So that's it. Again, man, it's really it reminds me of those cards like DPO.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yes, from the Scully set. You're like the lightning strikes, which was specific to I think the evolutionary adversaries.
Oh no,
yes,
and DPO was 1013.
Oh, the adversary, you mean, or the bluff card?
Darren Peter Oswald or whatever was his name.
Yeah, he had a sciences activator, so he was usually very difficult to play. So he would be a great one to store underneath one of these, specifically the hidden nest, because again, he was an evolutionary one. Now I showed you the primordial, the alien, and the evolutionary ones. So here we have the last 2 to round out the 5 affiliations: Dark Chamber, Dimensional Nexus, which corresponds to the government adversaries, as well as the occult adversaries. These are from Anasazi and Dihan D. Relics. Great season 2 episodes. So again, the same effect applies across the board. So this is kind of one of those things where I know, as you were saying, Mike, you don't necessarily include only alien adversaries in your deck. I found it to be if I narrow my conspiracy portion of my deck to just one certain type of adversaries, whether it be by affiliation or just adversaries that can use subterfuge cards, I find that just really helpful for trying to get some of these combos to come up that I'm hoping to have to get a combo effect out of it. So yeah, these might be making players more inclined to want to just have only a small subset of adversaries in there. And especially when you're being able to throw out the activator requirements, then you're kind of just looking at what are the best adversaries I can include in my deck that I want to get out on the mat. So
but I wonder about those cards though. It does say that you can place cards under it, and it says when you play an occult adversaries, other cards that are not occult adversaries that were stored under the cards, they are discarded. So I wonder what would be the point of placing cards that are not occult adversaries under the Dimensional Nexus, for instance. Why would you do that?
That's a good point.
Maybe just to make your opponent think that you do have an occult adversary when you don't have one in your hand yet. So maybe it could be kind of a bluff situation.
Mm-hmm. But, a true bluff situation, yeah.
Yeah,
good point. So, Mr. May, did you happen to recall, use any of these in any of your playtesting games that you can recall, or what was your impression of them?
So working backwards, I will again thematically wanting to make the bluff, wanting to make you second guess, maybe a delay tactic, right? So that was a feel. Trying to capture that, mechanically, we can debate, but that's a goal. So just to let you know, bluffing was a thing, and not just the bluffs, but to mess with your mind. What do I have here? And maybe to that end, our big picture as playtesting, and if as we play today, sometimes you can't hold on to the card for the situation to arise. We've got other issues. So I got to ditch it or sell it or something but I can't hold on to it. Now, the functionality was desired. I would say that in cases that made the cut, cards that ultimately got printed, you will see the adjustments to CP. That was still a moving target at the time. Our RP, still a moving target. What is the going to be the average number of points that a player is going to be able to generate, right? And so where's the sweet spot? Now, I think way differently now concerning balance and costs than I did back then, right? We've learned a lot. We screwed a lot of stuff up. So now we've got more information to draw from. So again, not getting distracted with the costs of the card, because that I think could be debated. The functionality, it was already probably being perceived at this time that diversity of deck construction may not exist as much. We can go back and look at the addition, but also the subtraction of combat cards. And again, the cookie cutter nature, right? So I have this mechanic to allow, the storage of my adversaries, but because of the keyword, I've got 5 different flavors, right? And as you mentioned, maybe we want to play with 1 or 2. I want to I don't want to compare it to colors, but alien occult, right? I mean, if the thought was, well, if you really like government, or you're gonna play with those cards, but like, right? I was thinking of 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 Ventura. If I want to play with that character, what I mean? That's kind of too deep of a cut for your thematic deck build. However, to create that opportunity so those cards didn't get wasted, you needed storage. Another concept, you need a battery, right? And so those ideas were being played with, but didn't make it beyond this iteration. Which is not uncommon. I mean, you got to have something for the next release, and the next release, like I said, back then, we were just happy to have the core set, and they had really looked at the next expansions, but where to go from there, like I said, if we could get them here, there was a lot of distractions. So I'm sure they would have had something, but it did feel like we were rapidly painting ourselves into a corner. But to everybody's defense, this is still a licensed product. And perfection costs too much and takes too long. And that's always the challenge with a licensed product. You have to, it's engineered well enough to sell. I hate to put it in those terms, but you're on deadlines. And so it's just time to go. And so, it's an interesting balance, but the idea is there.
And sometimes you're at the mercy of like how long those licensed properties are popular, because once the interest in them starts to wane, that's when sometimes a lot of the merchandise, starts to, dry up in terms of its production. So let's move on to some of the normal sites.
I had one thing on that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Put the occult one back for a second, or any of them. You also notice the other caveat on that too, is that it's 6 CP. You get 2 CP less for that, but they attack simultaneously. That's the other one that's on there on all of these. So if you could seed that with some decent occult or government adversaries, throw in a bluffed card in there, pop the one, the minute that you reveal the other one's coming out. It seems like that's the way this is set. So as long as if you play it from underneath, you could play multiple occult adversaries at one site and have them attack at once.
That'd be one heck of a way to get 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 and carry
ding, ding. That's exactly what I was thinking.
And the evil one.
Yeah.
Just bank them, and you don't have to sit and club up your hand. Now, granted, you got 6 CP, and you're also dealing with the 1 CP upkeep. That's going to be a little bit of a. I mean, right now you're trading 6 to gain 6, but you're got an ongoing 1 because really you're only saving the 6 but you're allowing yourself to play it anywhere. These aren't bad. I like them. I like them a lot better than I thought I would have. But
it preserves the combo. It creates combo.
Yep.
I'm not saying that these are overreaching. As you get deeper into the cards, you'll see that some of the cards just did a lot. And some of those cards that did a lot were broken up into their smaller pieces. But then, back to the Lone Gunman, then we'll just put all the pieces back together. We'll just give you a card that still has all the utility, even though we broke all the utility out. Except who needs a computer +1? But.
No kidding. What? Yeah. Sorry, Myers.
And I do want to point out that Nathan, who I don't know if he's I don't think he's tuning in tonight, but he is working on an expansion that revisits seasons 1, 2, and 3, and he does have a card, a CP card event for the pilot called Pentagon Storage Facility, which is going to have that effect of storing cards underneath. He did not draw that inspiration from these cards because he hadn't seen them at that point. It must have been from like the Men in Black card or maybe the Urn. I'm very, very interested to see how those cards are going to hold up when we eventually get to playtesting them, and we're going to see are they too powerful, and what kind of do we need upkeep and things like that, and should the activators on those cards stored underneath be ignored, or should they remain in place? A lot of things for those of us involved in the playtesting process to consider when we get to that point. So that'll be interesting. And I like that Nathan's using this effect that was conceived so long ago. So now I'm going to take us to just some of the normal sites, and we're going to start off with Mike, one of your all-time favorites. We got Coastal Northwest Oregon, or as it was called at the time, it was just Oregon Coast. And I guess I don't have the alpha card for this one, although I do have alpha cards for some of the other sites. Like sometimes these things have a tendency to stick together. So for a moment I thought it was actually hidden underneath there. So that's just a duplicate. But we're looking at the beta version for Oregon Coast, which ultimately became Coastal Northwest Oregon. So I do want to point out it's not the case on this one, but there are going to be some instances where these mono sites that only have 1 prerequisite, sometimes the prerequisite is going to be 5, and sometimes it's going to be 4 plus as a necessity. So keep an eye out for that. So then we're going to move on to Ellen's Air Base, which I do have the alpha card for that one, and I'm just adjusting my camera here so I can keep all of them in the frame. And let me know if you guys are having trouble seeing them. So again, we've got the alpha card here, which basically just has the site prerequisite, affiliation question, kind of bare bones, no cost, because again, it's just primary, secondary. And as Mr. May, you may have gone over this in the previous episode, but as I'm going through and showing these sites, can you tell us a little bit about what the primary and secondary indicated?
Yeah, so if you were doing a skill check, that skill check might direct you to, again, either the primary or secondary random modifier. And by flipping the next card over in your deck, you would produce one of these -1, 0, +1s, right? And then that modifier would be applied to the check.
And we're going to see some instances in which sometimes the skills required to make the site prerequisite, as in the case for Baltimore, Maryland, sciences and evidence collection, wasn't necessarily the case in the earlier iterations. Like, as you can see, the alpha version of this one was observation and sciences rather than evidence collection before it eventually transitioned. And so some of those are some of those nitty gritty details that wind up getting amended in the course of fine tuning these cards. And so now we have 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 here. And no change with that one. That one has stayed true to form from beginning to end. And the next one we have is Outskirts of Atlantic City, New Jersey. So some changes there with that in the sense that bureaucracy and observation was the initial skills needed for the site, but eventually that turned into subterfuge and observation. And so,
I have a question for Dave real quick.
Yeah.
Dave, on the whole idea of using the primary and secondary of flipping over things to add, subtract, do nothing to your skill check up at the upper corners on those, did you lose the card when you flipped it?
Discarded.
See, now that would be something I would worry about, especially in a deck full of collectible cards of losing. Just, okay, I want to add some more to my thing, and flipping over, say, a Deep Throat has a primary of I'm assuming a primary of positive, because if you're going to lose the Deep Throat, you might as well get the positive from it. But it's interesting to say the balance that you would take on trying to give yourself that extra edge, but willing to lose something that could be ultimately more powerful down the line. So it's kind of interesting.
And this is another instance where, as I mentioned, we have a mono site in which that there's only one possible skill that can be applied to the site. In this case, evidence collection, where the alpha card has it as 5 instead of the traditional 4. Although, as I'm noticing in this case, it does occasionally give us that stipulation where it can be potentially reduced to 4, depending on what kind of question you ask. So this is a variation that we did not see in the final card. So but again, it's one of those finer details that probably, Mr. May, you wouldn't recall the reasons for why that got amended. Well, I imagine, right?
There are a couple things here that I think impacted it. One was the streamlining of gameplay. But actually, math does play a role, right? That balance act of having equality so that you have an equal number. We're going to bump our subterfuge numbers up a little bit. They're kind of low. When we first made the cards, we don't have a lot of them. So we want to have equal distribution. And so there's some math. But again, streamlining back to the have everything 5, but then again, the CP cost or the RP cost is 2, make them all 4. Don't make them, have to get the bonus off the specific question. Just give them the question, reduce the text or complexity, right? There's just, again, a streamlining. So those are 2 things, streamlining and math, equal distribution.
Which, Mike, you're a big fan of math, as you have let us know on many occasions. Mike, as you recall in the previous one, we noted that some of the agents, like Mulder and Scully, cost up to 20 points. And can you imagine, Mike, how you would have felt about this game if those higher cost figures remained on these cards?
I don't know. Put an X in front or behind him, and Frank and I will fight about it for hours.
By 200-point army.
Maybe it would have been a more, I don't know, more fair way to rate the agents, because the number of points was the total of their skills. So the strongest the agent, the more points he had. Like Mulder costs 22 points because when you add up all of his skills, it gives 22. And Scully was 20 because her total skills was 20. So maybe this would have been a good way to really represent how strong each agent is, as opposed to saying it's either 3 RP or 4 RP or 5 RP. And sometimes when you are creating those agents, you are debating among yourselves, well, is this agent powerful enough to be 5 RP, or should it be 4 RP? And if you just add up the number of their skills, then you don't have that issue. But I agree that it is trickier to have to add up to 60 to create your team.
And I think it's
No.
when they
go ahead.
figured
Mr.
out
May.
agents were getting played. So if I'm not managing costs, what we call the cameos. But again, we still, like I said, we thought in terms back then of point totals. I hate to put it that way. This is my, the points for this unit is, even though it did work out that math, but we still had an influence, spiritual successor. There's still an influence there. Not that mattered. It might have even worked to have that influence, because that at least was looking at things differently than just from a collectible card game or just from a Magic standpoint. So
this is interesting that one decided to go from 4 to 3, not from a 5 to 4. So that would make it even more accessible if you were looking to try to get that one site investigated with a team that he didn't even have 4. That would be kind of neat.
And Mr. May, do you know why some of those sites have primary 0, some have primary 1, and others have primary -1?
Purely random. Again, you are correct. So back in the red zone top of the order, if you had a more desirable player, you wanted positive modifiers to affect the random effect. We're not rolling dice, but I have to have a random modifier. And again, it was just something that was native to those products that Duncan designed. So it just came over into the first design. So again, when I say math, it's just the distribution of numbers. If you figure out which cards give you pluses instead of minuses, you could try to load your deck.
Yep.
I was able to demonstrate that with top of the order,
which Mike has in his possession right now.
Yeah. And again, it's not that it's just balance from a pure design, right? For anybody who's ever designed a collectible card game or wants to do that for reasons I don't understand, balance is it's its own thing. And you could think it's wonderful and you can have rationale in your head, but when that card population grows, probably almost instantaneously past 60 cards, that can get broke really quick. So again, if that answered the question, just random number. There was probably a pattern. It was supposed to be based on rarity. I can't say on the alpha cards.
Yeah, they don't have rarity yet at that point.
Yeah, but again, it was going to happen. But it was just a little cumbersome, and it wasn't necessary. You know what I mean? Imagine that you could finally break even at the end of all that card play, just to be thwarted by your own deck with a negative modifier. Just pull your hair out. You wouldn't want a -1. So then I would have to put negatives on cards you want to play, like Deep Throat, Get in the Name of a Number, right? As a penalty for having such a powerful card in your deck. And again, unfortunately for Red Zone and top of the order, as for a number of CCGs, they did not really make it multiple expansions to see where that would ultimately lead to. Or, you just have to live within that particular year. Sports ones you probably could have handled where we were playing that year, that season, like you would with the other sports games. You wouldn't historically mix the historical years. And I'm on a different tirade now, so I'll just come back. But it's here. I mean, it's if you're into that stuff, you call me later. We'll kick it around.
I've got the red zone and the top of the order. I'd love to learn how to play if you still have cards.
Yes, in one of them tubs here in the garage. Which
I often think of Mr. May's garage as the that government facility at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Top men.
Or in X-Files terms, the Pentagon storage unit seen in like the pilot and the Erlenmeyer flask, because I mean, there's so many treasures to be holding there. And I do want to thank Mr. May again for sending these cards to me. I mean, this is I mean, as a diehard fan of this game, like to be able to like see these cards and pore over them like a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar for hours on end is just like it just quenches that thirst for, you know, learning more and more about the nuances of this game. And these cards have certainly just like, as we'll see as we continue to go through some of these other card suits, it's really like opening like some doors and just shining a light on some areas of it that we just didn't know about some of its early iterations. Which, Mike, who knows, you might be including some of these in that book you've been tinkering around with. Sorry, Mr. May, do go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you're welcome. I again apologize to you collectors out there that this box even existed, because if really looked at the volume, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would love to sell these for a house. There might be a house worth it, but this one had to go to the museum, the institution. Yeah. This had to go to a librarian, which there was only one of those in this group, to do exactly, because he would honor it and respect it. And if he does, sell them on eBay, I apologize. But, maybe if you're nice to him, he might bequeath one of the useless ones or one of the duplicates. Because it's kind of cute that there's enough of even the ones that just say site, right? Because Andy was in such a hurry, right, on the templates that just, he didn't erase. Some he did, some he didn't. But just even have the backs. You have to remember the backs with the whole copyright material backs. I love the backs on these when you show the different backings. On both editions. I mean, why it had to go from big to little, we don't know. But it
didn't load right in Microsoft Word.
It works.
Yeah.
Don't tip these guys off. They were cutting edge back then. They were using Works.
That's right. Wow.
Get those.
Yes,
there are some things that I actually recognize. So I became a professional graphic artist.
Mike, can I stop you real quick? Real quick, because we are looking at one of the more
right now you got to put it in right now. All right.
Yeah, sorry. We're looking at Scully's Dream here, Mike. This is before that lovely GenCon card came into existence. So yes, insert angelic voices singing right now. We are looking at Scully's Dream. I do wish that I had that GenCon card here to show the evolution of it here, but unfortunately we're gonna have to just settle for Northeast Georgetown Medical Center because I do not have a Scully's Dream. But yeah, we do have the alpha version of Scully's Dream as well as the beta version here. And I do want to point out that the alpha version of Scully's Dream was originally Observation 4, not Medical 4, that we come to see on all the future iterations that came after that. So again, just had to point that out. And again, unlike all the ones that came after, including the GenCon card, it did offer that stipulation: if you ask if the method is threats, the observation skill is 3+, which we have never seen a 3+, as Dave was mentioning earlier when he first spotted that. Anyway, Mike, sorry to interrupt but do continue. I
was actually gonna look something up on that. I'm kind of curious on the alpha one. It actually said the timestamp was 9 minutes and 14 seconds.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's actually the frame that they used for Scully's Dream. That's what I was curious.
Oh yes, and Dax made that card. Dax posted in our Discord group. It shows the clouds seen in the opening of the episode.
So he actually found the stamp and went. Oh, that's cool. No, what I was saying is, in the late 90s, I became a professional graphic artist, and I worked for a few companies. And at the time, we used, Photoshop was brand new, but we were still using vector art. And if you know what vector art is, it's just like, God, it's old school. But you can see in some of these original cards, I think that they were using vector graphics that eventually kind of went into, I don't know if they were using Photoshop. Do you remember what graphics program they were using, Dave?
You know, I'm not sure what NLS, I know what we did, but I don't know what they did. So I'm still hanging with you, but for different reasons.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm glad we didn't wind up getting sites with like criminal investigation 6+. Although with criminal investigation, that's usually not hard to do. But some of the other ones like bureaucracy and computer and subterfuge, and I feel like the agents as they exist now would have been, and even as they were in the playtest versions, because their skills really did not change too much. That would have been a lot harder to, on average, get a skill check of 6. And did you recall finding that to be the case, Mr. May? Like you just have a hard time making those site investigations during playtesting?
You know, I don't remember there being that difficult of a time. What typically happened is that you would gravitate initially, you know, towards key agents and key adversaries or episodes that you liked. And, you know, back to this Skinner, right? So you would find the guys you want to play with and then find the sites that work with the guys you want to play with. And you played with the monsters you want to play with, despite the fact that you whether you realized or not, that wasn't going to do you any good today, you know, because of whatever site selection your opponent had. So yeah, it's just kind of that stayed the same. It was just cost. It was speed of play.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the always the challenge with any game design is speed of play, especially when dealing with licensed product development. Not many licensors, I mean, leave you alone to do what you want. You know, they want to know that a couple 8-year-olds are going to sit down and play, and it's, you know, gonna go fast and furious, and like it's slapjack or something, and you'll be done in 10 minutes. And then you say, no, this is like Monopoly. We're gonna be here for the next 4 hours. And no, let's see if we can find somebody else.
Has anyone actually had a game of X-Files CCG, not a playtest game, go 4 hours?
Matt and I came close. I think we were 3 something. But I mean, this was before, well, Discord. You know, when we were just playing how we were used to playing. But yeah, I think we cycled through our decks a couple of times, and if I remember right, if somebody won, I don't remember who it was. I swear, I think we just gave up on it. Like, it was just going too long, and he had to go, and because he was living in a different place, and I had to go to bed or something. Something like that. This was years and years ago, but yeah, it just got too long, too monotonous, if I recall.
Yeah, some games just can't overstay their welcome. I think this is a good one because it has a nice, we can, unlike those ones that happen really quickly with a right answer out of the gate and then a really quick ending. For the most part, most of the games will last about an hour, hour and a half, and that's your sweet spot. And that's you can't overstay welcomes. You overstay welcomes, you bore people. You go too fast, and it's like, all right, well, I could play 100 games of this in one night. You run out, you burn out too quickly. So you need that nice hour and a half is right on the money for me.
I know it's like going to a house party, you know, and they're like, you know, you get there at 6 p.m. and they're like, oh, dude, we're all gonna play a giant game of Risk. And you're like,
yeah, oh god,
nah.
Yeah, Twilight Imperium.
My childhood is different. We went over, we busted it out, Third Reich, You know, we made some mac and cheese, and then we woke up the next morning and we finished the Third Reich game.
I'm not averse to long games once in a while, but that's a once in a while thing. If you want to, oh yeah, too much. Oh no.
Oh,
I want to point out that we're looking at one of the two Truth Is Out There edition exclusive sites. In this one, tracking the killer as it was ultimately titled. This is Mike's actual favorite site, not Coastal Northwest Oregon. So the original title for this site was 737 26th Street, Syracuse, New York, before it ultimately became Tracking the Killer. And I also want to point out, because this has kind of been a spot of contention amongst some of us hardcore fans, I do want to point out that the discrepancy between the keyword and the question type is still present. Yeah, so it wasn't something that initially it was intended to match, and then it just got misprinted on the final draft.
I saw typos at some of the earlier ones. I wouldn't completely write that off of saying that somebody didn't template wrong in the alpha or the beta.
I think it could be a case of it being a mistake on those cards, and then somebody saying, okay, it's intentional, I'm going to do that for the final version. Because and it's interesting also, it does say that the episode is F Emasculata when it actually is Colony. So
a lot of the episodes are wrong on here. I think that just was more like maybe like sometimes the quotes aren't always aligned with the episode on there. That happens a lot. I do want to point out I do have like 3 copies of these. So Mike, I don't know. I mean, as Dave was saying earlier, maybe pass along some of the duplicates here. I feel like one of these has got to have your name on it, right?
I'm honestly the only thing that I can think of, and I just looked it up. I mean, well, no, that's Fly Creek. My thought was maybe they changed it because 737 Southwest, whatever, 26 actually belonged to some. Like, why would you change the address to Tracking the Killer? That doesn't make any sense.
To me, is the fact is some of them are really long. That one, if I had to say every time that's the card I'm playing, I would trip over that every time. A string of numbers on top of each other. No. I could never live in New York. I cannot live on those streets because, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's easier.
This is the other Truth Is Out There edition exclusive, which is why it doesn't have an alpha card. The Truth Is Out There edition exclusives, they didn't have alpha cards at the time because they came in a little bit later. But again, Women's Health Clinic, Richfield, Maryland, like Tracking the Killer, keyword result. However, the question type is motive. So again, the discrepancy was present from the get-go on both of these 2 cards.
Right. Looking at the quotes, like it almost seems like the title could have been 1255 19th Street, Richmond, instead of Women's Health Clinic. And what I like about those cards, and we've seen some instances of that, is that when you look at the timestamp, it's not from the scene that is used in the final version of the card. And like, for instance, for the one from Genderbender, it actually says crop circle. And when you look at the timestamp, initially, I think it was supposed to be the final shot of the episode in the field with Mulder and Scully inside of the crop circle.
And I also have a feeling that maybe because of some of those discrepancies on like the titles versus the quote not matching, that might explain why we got the card Relentless Pursuit, which has an image from Humbug, but a quote from Genderbender, and the episode title listed on the card is Genderbender. So I think that maybe it's like one of those instances where you're going through like these 50 some odd cards for the Premier Edition. And of course, like the typos that Dave alluded to earlier, some things just wind up slipping through. And so I think that maybe that's why we got that discrepancy on the Relentless Pursuit when we have these instances where the episode title listed here doesn't match. And it's possible, Guillaume, with respect. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to joke because of the graphic artists, they don't spell. Right? I mean, it's not how. I mean, I'll give you guys credit, but the reality is, well, yeah, they you're only as good as the information that you were supplied.
Correct.
And that's an engine. And again, nothing against Andy or NLS, because technically both groups were watching, and some were trying to pick images for aesthetic and power, right? This is a cool picture, or maybe not hearing that this is the cool scene, the quote, so it's, but at the end of the day, if there was any typos, I blame Brian for not catching them, because that's kind of stuff he looks for.
He was the secretary after all.
He was. That was his thing. So, and if he probably did catch it. If he was here, he'd probably, I told him. It was in that letter. Told him all this. He had to use a stopwatch when we watched it on tape.
And that does bring us to the end of the site cards. Mr. May, as you pointed out, there are some of these. I say they're not blank per se, but they don't have any information specific to a particular episode. No timestamp or game effect or anything on there. So, yeah, template cards. Got a whole bunch of those. Is almost as many copies as Mike has of Not on the Menu, actually. So now we're going to turn our attention over to the event cards, and I'm going to start off with one that, again, like the conspiracy resource sites, did not make the cut at all. Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong one.
I was going to say, I was like, that's a card.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it is. Sorry, my bad. And I almost just dropped them all, so just bear with me real quick, gentlemen. So let me just get this one out there. Yes, here's the one that did not make the cut. Punitive assignment, and I'll go ahead and zoom in on that real quick so you guys can get a chance to mull over that effect while I try to sort out the mess that I just made here with these sorted cards. Can you guys read that? Or do I need to focus?
No, that's good.
That's good.
It's good?
Yep.
Oops.
Well, it does look familiar, though.
Oh, it's kind of, yeah. It is somewhat similar to, I forgot the name of
it assigned?
the event card.
Assigned to, it wasn't assigned to the
Yeah.
X-Files?
Yeah.
That's why it's like, and then I'm looking at it's the same thing, except the only caveat is it's
60.
60 points.
This is also a killer. Yeah, I just noticed that. I never noticed that assigned was a killer. Assigned to the X-Files was always a killer, because you had to have, it's almost like you had to have somebody die before you could put somebody on the team.
Well, that's interesting, because we also do have assigned to the X-Files as well, both the primary and the beta version of it here. And let me just focus again. So,
punitive assignment, that would have been from the same scene, right? Like, because it doesn't say the name of the episode on those early cards.
Yes.
But I assume it would
punitive
have been from the
assignment
pilot as well.
Yeah, no episode that's drawn from at all. So just a game effect. But yes, the 60-point maximum. So very obviously we're playing with a different point system than what we ultimately got, and we didn't have point system. We were dealing with resource points and conspiracy points when all is said and done. So Dave, Mr. May, you did mention earlier that really by the time you got to it, like the alpha cards were pretty much like had come and gone, and so the you were working with the betas mostly by that point, so you didn't really encounter this previously conceived point system, right?
Yeah, and that's one reason why that card isn't made, is because we don't see it. We see it, but not like that, because the language is different. And so again, they knew that they wanted to bring another agent in. They knew that they probably wanted to do killer cards. They knew that had to happen. And somebody said, well, once I lose my agent, now what? Am I ruined for the rest of the game? And then, of course, the answer is no. You got to be able to pull another agent in order not to, have your game ruined.
Yeah, and this assigned to the X-Files effect here. This alpha card pretty much is
like a training
card.
Yeah, it's a training card for the X-Files research card, which I have right here.
It's interesting that it cannot be played on. Originally, it could not be played on Mulder or Scully.
Yeah, that was it. That was in place from day one. And I don't know if it had something to do with the particular skills involved. Maybe because they just didn't want to see Mulder get 5 alien or something like that. I often wondered why that was the case, or was it more of a thematic thing?
Yeah, alien investigation, occult investigation, and sciences. If he got a +1, he could do. He's got 5 in alien investigation. He's got 4 in occult.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 3. Yeah, so he's a one-man wrecking crew once he does that with monocytes.
But what about Scully though? I mean, why say? I mean, it's not like it's gaining medical.
It's just because they're the favorite cards. That's why I know Dave had already said a long time ago the reason why Scully, Skinner, and Mulder, you get like, okay, if you play those 3, you're pretty much not playing anyone else, because if you want to play the big guys, you're gonna have to sacrifice a little bit because they cost so much.
I'm just putting the dissection card on here without a playtest card because this is one card. Either it wasn't included in the set or it was a late edition, which wouldn't be surprising considering the effect for dissection involves resource points. This is kind of, like a hard evidence, but after an adversary is killed in combat. So I could see that this could have been a late edition, so it may not have had a playtest card, or maybe like some of the cards that got axed from it, like either the punitive assignment or some of those site resource cards. So maybe there was room to tuck in more card effects that maybe they came up in the 11th hour. I don't know if that was the case, Mr. May. If they were gunning for that 354 magic number when they were looking to release Premiere.
So no, there is some 11th hour action happening. It did happen. I mean, I do believe I would have everything that I was ever sent. So whatever, and I'm not saying that I got it all per se, because again, Andy's not here. But I can confirm the 11th hour, right? Where we're either unhappy internally, our approvals, that's doing its thing in the background too, right? Where if you got a card hung up in approval, it's got mechanics you want, but a picture because no one's disapproving the mechanics, but there's something else that's hanging whatever up, right? And so that's the answer there. And again, they might have come up with some stuff in the office that they never sent out for playtesting. And when you get into resource management and some of the what I'm going to call game maintenance, right? Not the cool thematic stuff, but the game maintenance stuff. I don't know if they would have sent all that out because it is what it is.
Steven, could you please go back to previous cards? Could you please go back to Evidence Destroyed and assign to the X-Files?
The Flash?
Yeah,
there's Flash
one
there as well.
The Flash effect.
And assigned to the X-Files also had that. Well, it's not the activator, but it does say, I forgot the text, but it does mention Flash as well on the assigned to the X-File.
And so, as we heard from Dave Meyer near the start of the broadcast, that is referring that's a magic term, right,
yes.
Dave?
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning of time and space, and that was again original magic and timing, instants and interrupts, and the variance of speed. And then we got into first in, last out, first in, first out. I don't want to bore everybody with it. We play a card, you then respond to the card. I mean, we didn't have terms like stacks back then. We didn't talk about stacks. So again, I give them credit that they were trying to come up with the response for the negates. but play a card, respond to a card. Let's not try to make this more complicated with more keywords. And you mentioned that as the last man standing, even though technically I brought 2 buddies with me, but they might not have been on the payroll, we were attempting to revise X-Files by simplifying, and the way we were going to do that was predominantly with eliminating some of the keyword confusion, right? Still want keywords. I love me some keywords. I adore keywords, but just trying to simplify the real estate, because that's a lot of information, word information, and wanting to eliminate that.
I'm noticing an asterisk on some, not many of them, but some of the card titles have an asterisk next to them, and I don't know if that is a marker for like this card title is not set in stone.
Yeah, again, I can't tell you why the asterisk was there. I know that if there was if there was a call out in the script, obviously looking for quotes in script, but you're also looking for names in the script, right? You're besides trying to come up with something witty, because if you came up with something witty, that might require approval. If you came up with something in the script and then they were offended by the line that was already written, or okay, you could at least point back and say, hey, that got said on screen, or that was written, that was in the notes.
Gotcha.
But again, I don't know the asterisks, but name convention was entertaining back then.
So could you go back real quick just
yeah,
for
sure.
the
Which one?
well on the
authorized access only?
X-Files. No, the assigned to the X-Files card. And again, maybe because I'm not familiar with Magic, so it does not ring a bell to me, but that flash activator, was it like supposed to be just something that you play real quick in response to a card that has just been played? Or like I'm not really seeing how that would have worked.
The concern was card play. So if in this case I played a card, evidence collection skill, this card being played would negate or remove that card effect before any other card effect or response could take place.
Okay.
It was again, back in the day, it was to interrupt would be the proper Magic term.
Counterspell.
But it had to interrupt, and even though we eventually realized maybe it's all too complicated, you play a card, you respond to a card, and that's how we play it today. You play a card, you respond to a card. It didn't have to be any more complicated than that. But and we didn't have a stack. So if you wanted to go back and I want this to resolve, and then you played something else to resolve, this in essence would resolve first, and you couldn't get around it with another card, right?
And speaking of flash, go ahead. I want to. Speaking of flash, I have another card with a flash, but not the activator. This is the unexplainable time loss here. And Guillaume, I'll let you get back to your question. I just wanted to get the cards moving when we get to the more notable ones. I just had to kind of stop the discussion real quick to point out this is one of the 2 cards, and possibly Mike, that you were looking forward to seeing, right? So the unexplainable time loss, we got the alpha version here, which had a little bit more to its effect than what we got by the end with this very much a staple card in terms of its power. So in addition to the normal effect that calls for a scientist force skill check to be made by the team, or the turn ends immediately, in addition, if your opponent knows that your adversary is an alien affiliation, then this card works automatically, and the controlling player may not make a skill check to avoid this effect. So there is a way to just be like, yeah, that scientist 4 skill check. I see you can make that, but guess what? You can't, because my X-Files affiliation. That's almost like dipping into power rules.
Yeah, that's I was. Yeah, it was almost like a power thing.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what do you think of this one, Mike? The original version.
I think it's pretty cool, but
too much.
Why they basically took that idea, because I mean it's a very, again, not to overuse the word, but it's a very niche effect depending upon what if you don't pick an alien investigation, or your opponent hasn't identified that your affiliation is alien, that it doesn't really do any good if they can in fact make the skill check. So it makes sense to make it a power. It's interesting.
Well, how about this? Are there any in other cards in the game that make reference to knowing something? And I know that no, that's Mrs. Mulder, something different. But I know that on this one says, in addition, if you already know it, you get this bonus power for. Is there any other card in this set that does that?
In the 1013 expansion, the red-haired man adversary does have his game effect. That says if you know your opponent, if you know 2 of your opponents, or if your opponent knows 2 of your X-Files characters, the cost is reduced. Yeah, exactly. Moving on to the next one, because this is obviously another big one. There we go. We have the beta one first. We have the big kahuna as far as events goes. We have
way different in the primary.
Way different. And 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, I want your take on the original iteration of this, because I know your position on the Deep Throat card.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. That was when I first started playing, and everybody had 2 Deep Throats in there. I kept questioning it, because when you remove it from the game, I think you remove it from the game. I don't think you should have 2 of them. But that's, I've won tournaments playing that way, so I don't want to take that back now.
And remove any further Deep Throat cards that are drawn. Yep. So there's your validation right there, Dave. Although, again, it was axed from the final version of Deep Throat. It was. But at least at one point in time, there was sanity existed. And so, yep, that is quite a powerful card, and it's when all said and done. But at least it had a little bit of restraint going on. But I do like that you play this card during your turn to search through your bureau deck and add any one site card to your hand. So I remember back when
there's no way I'd do that as a trade.
I know, but I remember, Mike, back when you first interviewed Dave May long time ago, and he first revealed that with the Deep Throat card, we had options available to us. And so, the choice of digging through and gathering any site. You didn't unlike those agent cards where you can only get a particular one with their game effect. Here you can get any site you wanted, or you can get the question, which, as Dave said, I think most players would be just more inclined to forget the site investigation, just go right into it, cut to the chase. Go right to the question.
Yeah. Pay. Well, in this case, it's still not a pay scale. It's not like you're paying resources out of the alpha phase. But it's definitely something that's interesting. But I do like the fact that I'm slightly vindicated with the whole idea of you got one, you play it, it's gone. It's gone. Any future ones are garbage. You can't burn them. You have to remove them. Mm-hmm. So,
I really wish that was the case for the Deep Throat card, especially during tournaments.
I know it does. But you handicapped yourself if you did not have them in your tournament decks. I'm talking old school. I'm talking current. I'm like, you don't have staples. Deep Throat is a staple when you're talking this game in a tournament environment. You don't have it. You are handicapping yourself.
Oh, Killer Sherry had 2. That's all you need to know.
I want to know
did we tell you that we ran into her?
I heard rumor that the band was getting together, and I can't help it, but man, Stephen, just the fact that you got that season 1 callback to the tease, to the there's more to Deep Throat, like you still remember that, like you've been waiting, like that
when
got
it comes
teased 2 years
when it comes
ago.
to X-Files CCG, I have like an eidetic memory when it comes to X-Files and this game. Everything else, my memory is absolute trash.
Hey, Steven,
I do not remember
a box,
and you're like, where's the Deep Throat in the box? Where is it in here? Dave says
I'm expecting to just drop a box full of matches, and then he starts immediately telling me how many we dropped. He's got some weird savant type material on
of X-Files.
Yes, he like I watched all these things as a kid, and I can't even remember half these things, and he's watching them 25 years later. And it's like, oh yeah, that's from this episode. I sort my cards by episode type. All right, there, Mr. High Fidelity. But
that's a great movie, by the way.
It is a great movie.
I was actually kind of curious because there's been some comments about these Dave May's glad that these went to the librarian because he's the only one that's going to pour over them. My question to you, Stephen, is: are you going to sort these by Dewey Decimal?
Why would that? That would be a lot of work to assign classification to them. I mean, when they're already kind of like you've already got classification with the suits, and also you've got bureau file numbers that already exist. So
John Cusack can sort autobiographical.
I'm going to be
question seriously.
No, I'm going to be sorting them episode order as always when all is said and done.
He's a maniac. He's a maniac. Sort of like, oh god.
Well, if you'll note that
also, Stephen, also notice that the fact that every time you disassemble every deck you build, every time, and rebuild every time, I've got fistfuls of these stupid boxes everywhere.
Yeah, the black boxes.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got like 10 or 12 sitting right here. I have no idea what's in them.
I have 14 standing decks right now with sort of pseudo proxies that I've kind of put in there, and a little slip of paper that says these 10 cards need to go back in to make this a viable deck. I do not break down my decks. No, there's no way. That's crazy.
Well, that is not unique to me. 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 actually does the same thing too.
Oh my god.
So I want to point out.
I only have mostly 2 copies of each card. So if I don't disassemble my deck each time, like my binder is like completely empty. So yeah,
that's fair. That is fair. That is completely fair. That is.
So I also want to point out a card that did not make the final cut because this comes back to the conspiracy resource sites and the resource sites played by the investigating player. So this here was a counter to that layer uncovered, and so this is play this card to cause any one conspiracy site resource in play to be discarded. So it makes sense that when you have a number of those conspiracy site resource cards that are sitting on your opponent's mat because they have a resource keyword, so they're in play. This is a good one to have. If had those cards made it to the final version, this would be a worthwhile inclusion, right?
Here's a question.
6 RPs though.
Yeah, it's 6 RPs, but also think about that. Okay, so say they have 3 cards underneath it. You negate the layer that's hiding the 3 cards underneath it. Do those 3 cards go away immediately?
I believe so. I think it did say on those cards.
It said. I didn't see if it said. I didn't know if it said anything about if this card is discarded. I know the fact is if you play an occult and anything underneath it is not an occult, that gets discarded. But yeah, that would be
right.
Yeah,
but I think that would be a safe bet, though. I think it would be a safe bet if the stuff that's underneath would be discarded.
If it fell apart, the resource went away. I think that the resources went away as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's
much like if you got rid of rejuvenating caves, all those tokens sitting on it would go away as well.
I still will never do that, but I think you are in the right to do it. I think you are. I think Frohickey should be able to do it. And I hope we see him.
Oh, yes, we will. And he actually has a little bit more information on his card about when specifically he's supposed to be played. So we'll get to him shortly. I also want to point out Tour the State, which ultimately was retitled to Driving. Now, this is interesting because I do recall there was one of the magazines, like Inquest or something, like they produced it. They had a checklist of the X-File cards from Premiere in them. I don't remember which one, and hopefully Mike will be able to find it. But Inquest did list Tour the State as one of its cards.
I have that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, well, so that I guess that title was probably a 11th hour change because at that time, like the promotional stuff was already going out to the magazines, and so yeah, I do like this is an answer to a question that because I saw that checklist a while back and I was like, what is Tour the State? And so here we have it. And so Guillaume, I want to. Oh, you got it, Mike. Which one was
this one says Driving? It must be a different one.
Yeah, it's actually in the magazine pages. It's not a separate checklist. Yeah, it's in the pages. I think it's one of the Inquest most likely.
Probably for that and the price guide, and it wasn't approved, obviously.
So Guillaume, I wanted to give you a chance to go back to your question because you were inquiring about the flash activator, which we are going to see on a small number of these. But I wanted to give you a chance to get as much clarification on that.
Yeah, so I get that the idea is like once you play the card with the flash activator, basically just interrupts the card that has just been played by your opponent. But since the flash activator is on an event card, that means that I cannot respond with the 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, for instance, or another card that negates an event. Could you negate a card that has a flash activator?
In theory, to speak on again their behalf, I believe what they were going for is basically that yes, you couldn't negate that card. It moved so fast, right, that it worked automatically. Basically, this card cannot be countered. Is a timing mechanism. So it had to resolve before anything else could resolve. So it could not be countered. So, but that's just not how the game's played. Action, reaction. And and so that appeared to have just been abandoned. And I don't know why.
And on one of the previous cards assigned to the X-Files, when it mentions, you adding an agent to your team, it says, if I remember correctly, if the agent is played as a flash card, and I'm trying to figure out in what instance you play an agent like as a flash card, as a reaction to something that your opponent has just played.
Well, again, if you're playing an agent, it's to bring it into play. And the question then is what is the timing of bringing in the agent like a witness? And should the agent coming into play be fully resolved? In other words, the agent comes into play before it can, for lack of a better term, be not negated but discarded, right? So I've got this huge investment in bringing an agent in play. The goal is to get the agent in play and not interrupt that process.
Okay.
In theory, but again, a lot of this idea was abandoned because ultimately it just when at the end of the day, the way things shook out, it was appropriate to give action reaction, and an agent that comes in as a witness comes in as a witness. It's still an agent couldn't negate the agent as a witness, even though it plays as a witness. Thus, it was in play. And then you deal with it. But it also exit play. Doesn't stay permanently in play.
Okay.
I noticed that with I noticed with the training cards, and I had one. I showed one just a moment ago, SWAT training, but there'll be more that come up as we go through because there was like 5 training cards. So originally, I say originally even in the beta version of it, it had the agent removed for 2 full turns as opposed to 1. And the card costs 3 instead of 2, which I'm like, at that point, I mean, the training cards as we know them now are not very appealing when you have an agent move from play for 1 turn. You know, to say nothing about it being gone for 2 full turns. I'm like, at that point, I suppose that was probably an instance of like, yeah, that trying to make the card desirable by cutting back on some of the restrictions, or in this case, the overhead with that higher cost.
Speed kills. So again, you can't have a turn where you do nothing, even though you inflicted the do nothing on yourself by having to go back to the bureau to get equipment, sending a agent out to be trained. You need to have them all in the field, and you need to basically be doing sites every turn. Giving up turns. It didn't feel good back then. I don't know if it ever feels good, but just didn't have the sensibility to deal with doing nothing on a turn. So
I find it interesting that Lamana dies in the elevator crash was a chase card.
Yeah, could you explain what that is? What does chase card refer to?
Is that was that on the promo or the rare?
Lamana dies in the elevator crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but is that where the chase appeared?
Yeah, it was on the alpha for the Jerry Lamana dies in the elevator.
Yeah, but is that the rarity? Was the rarity chase? Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I needed to remember. So I guess technically a chase card is the ultra rare card.
Yeah.
Well, right. There are cards that just say ultra rare on them. Like
I realize that. So and there's cards that say promo.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. So we didn't create a card that said box topper. What is a box topper?
Promo.
Yeah. There, but so. And again, I guess deny everything becomes a type of chase when how you distribute it. So it's again, that's what the term chase is supposed to represent. It's probably the equivalent of an ultra rare, or it has to have this secondary use. It's supposed to be so powerful and so sought after that you get one a case or one every 50 polybagged inquests.
So for all that trouble, you end up killing Lamana for a chase card.
Yes.
All of the ultra rares on this Scry checklist, every single ultra rare is referred to as a chase.
Yes.
Okay.
So they are interchangeable, but chase, promos, ultra rares all kind of become the same thing.
Does that mean I have a box full of ultra rare not on the menus?
Yeah, they well, but again, if you look back at yes, you do. You actually congratulations, you got the market cornered. If it wasn't for that other guy who's really
another one that had an asterisk in the title, 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬. So not sure how that would have been called into question, but also want to throw out, we have the first of 3 multiplayer cards in its alpha and beta form. And Mr. May, I gotta ask, in the time that you were playtesting it, did you observe any multiplayer games getting playtested?
We tried it a couple times. I don't remember us having real directed rules because again, back in the day, left, right, hit. You're gonna pick who you're gonna pick on, as the cat said hi. So I think we just made up our own rules and play test. Yeah, it's
No,
bring
not
your
mine.
cat. Bring your cat to work day. It's mine.
Oh, okay. We all have
So-
cats here, basically, don't we?
That's,
Every one of us is a cat owner. How about that?
I've
Very
got 5 of them
very
right
pet
now.
friendly on Alien Investigations. What was that, Dave?
I've got 5 of them right now.
Good Lord.
Hey, we foster a lot. So we got 1. Hey, anybody want a cat? I got a couple. You can have them. I'll send them your way.
We used to foster at the old house when we had the foster the kitten room, and it never failed. Usually we'd keep one of them.
Yeah.
So the Relentless Pursuit does not have a playtest card. So again, it's probably an instance where it came in at the 11th hour. And of course, given that the cost factors into the effect, doesn't surprise me because that was not introduced until the beta version or till the beta version of the playtest cards. And so again, as we said earlier, that there were some 11th hour editions, and so this most likely was one of them. And I did note that so probably so rushed that the image, which is from Humbug, yet the quote and the episode title listed on here is Gender Bender. But again, they didn't have the luxury of the internet back then in the 90s.
Right. Oh, sorry. I also find interesting about that is with the 11th hour card, it was one of the only ones that has that ability to play as a react flash kind of thing, because that's the one. Yeah, it's the one that I'm going to play it. You can't draw them now. Same with the red tape. I bet you we run into. Do we have 2 for red tape? We have almost red tape.
You have red tape, but it'll be here shortly. So again, no playtest card for Rejuvenating Caves as well. But again, being that it involved conspiracy points, doesn't surprise. Now, I also want to point out we have a card here that again did not make the cut, and this one is from the Fire episode called the Fire episode, and it's called Arson. Play this card to cause any one active site resource in play to be discarded. So this is the counter for the 2 site resource cards that we saw that are played by the investigating player, the Armory and the Witness Protection Program. So there was the counter for that one. So again, having the counters for some of those powerful cards. But again, 6 CP though, I guess it's just too pricey, right, guys?
Yeah.
Too pricey. And we also have Meet Brother Andrew, one of the Truth Is Out There edition exclusives. So again, no alpha card for that one. But also, which makes sense because the keywords, right, Mr. May, weren't really a thing until the beta version. As we look at some of these alpha cards, it's just basically like a paragraph of effect, and the keywords are incorporated into it. And so it's not till you get to the beta version that things are broken up into like activators and keywords, as opposed to when you look at the alpha cards, they're like, play this card when it meets this condition.
Yeah, technically. And again, I'm not, like I said, when we were looking at simplifying it, we were actually going to return it back to the body text. we were going to go back the opposite direction. We were going to, so.
And this one is interesting game because I think because we saw Crop Circles was also a site from the same episode, Gender Bender. So I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that they altered the name of the site card to Steveson when it's like, oh, we have 2 cards titled Crop Circles, so one of them's got to go, right?
Although I think for that effect they could have used any other episode, but yeah, I like that we finally we did get that shot on the card, and that's the most important thing.
Hey, it's a chase. Here's another killer card. It's a chase.
Yep, chase card. Yep, and I don't have the alpha version for this one. We do have the alpha version for some of the other ones, like Reggie Purdue has his, but yeah, don't have it for this one. But as I noted at the start of this, some of these things have a tendency to stick together. So when we wrap this up and I get the binder that I ordered for these, I'm going to definitely, and I'm sleeving them and cataloging them. I'll make double sure I don't miss any of them because, again, Mike, that librarian in me won't stand for any of these artifacts to go unseen and to continue going hidden. I'm going to be digging and sifting.
I told Dave from like the first moment that we found out he had this box, I was like, you need to send this to Steven.
Because you didn't want to take the time to go through all of them card by card, did you?
Oh, dude, I love you guys. I remember there was a card. Well, how about you go look? Well, yeah.
Ask Steven.
Now
so I guess I'm like I have the role of Brian Woodward, don't I?
We all find our niche.
I just talked to Brian.
We all play our role. What was that, Mike?
I said I just talked to Brian today. Actually, he doesn't have much of his own stuff anymore, so I'm going to send him a copy of Peasantry for the Winter Slam, so that me and Dave and Brian can do some Peasantry action. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So notice the training cards. Yeah. Again, as I previously stated, 2 full turns is when the agents remove. Cost of 3, but eventually reduced to 2. So again, step in the right direction. But even then, we only maybe play training cards when we're doing a sealed deck game, right?
Yeah. So Steven, I was looking at I found the Inquest magazine that does have that full list of cards that you mentioned, and it does say tour of the state in it, and it also says that for the adversary squeeze, it does say the squeeze, and it says frozen submarine and paper shackles. So it has a list of all the 350 X-Files, but it does say at the end of the article that at press time the cards are not finalized yet, so some minor changes may occur. And the magazine is from November '96.
Yeah, devil's in the details, right?
But it also does have the teamwork promo mentioned.
Oh, which is a '97 promo, actually.
Yeah.
And actually that's one where we don't have a playtest card for that one. But again, it involves resource points, so not surprising. And so here's a grid pattern search, which I want to note that, and a lot of the alpha versions of the cards, like skill checks, were very much a recurring thing. So the grid pattern search in its alpha format was play this card during your turn to return any one card that is in your discard pile back into your hand if a team in the field makes an evidence collection skill check of 5. How would we like that card, Dave, if that was the effect? If that effect remained intact, Dave Meyer.
Me? Oh yeah, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be as good. But grid pattern, another staple. It's got to be in every deck. At least one. At least one.
And
or
that
2.
Version, like but it's 1 purple, so it goes for the investigating or the conspiracy player for just the cost of 1. That's really good.
Yeah, and ultimately did not go that way. And actually, like I think there's a card in the Season 5 expansion that I'm working on where I think I'm vaguely reminded of, right, Guillaume, in terms of Dr. Verber, right, where we're like, should we be able to draw any card? Should we be able to just draw select cards? It's like some of those finer details really make the difference in the card being way too powerful, don't they?
Yeah, but there is a grid pattern search for the conspiracy player in the Season 6 expansion, so eventually we'll be able to do that.
At last. I gotta ask, what is the cost of it going to be?
It's 2 CP.
2? Oh gosh, and yet
that's still pretty. Yeah,
it's 2 RP for the investigating player, so 2 CP for the conspiracy player.
That really does make the taking chances event card that we're actually going to see shortly. That thing costs 4 just to draw an adversary, and here with that grid pattern conspiracy card, we only have to pay 2. So that, I think that
also it means that it's like the card has not come up yet, as opposed to the card has come up. You've either played it or discarded it. So
it's a discard. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. And actually, it's funny I should mention Taking the Chances. It's coming up soon, and it's got a title you guys will not recognize. And so, again, another Truth is Out There edition exclusive. Mike, do you have any more signed cards by Dr. Joe Ridley?
I've got a couple. Yeah, he great guy. Man,
Great interview you did with him.
Well, you made it a great interview. It was a train wreck going into.
I didn't interview him. I wasn't there yet.
No, you edited it.
Oh, I did edit it. That's right. No. Oh, no. Sorry. No, credit where credit's due. David Peace edited that one.
Is that who did that one?
Yeah. I did not do that one. He did a great job. I love the graphics.
Okay, I couldn't remember, but I remember just from the beginning, like I mispronounced his name, and like I was in one of my favorite interviews just because of that Stargate episode he was in. It was great.
Yeah, I love that moment in that interview when you guys are talking about how much that scene meant to you.
Oh yeah.
And so here's one of the promo cards, although at the time that it was in the beta form, it was actually just going to be a rare. But here we have the Fighter Interceptor card. No changes to the effect or anything like that. The cost did get increased from 3 to 4 when all said and done, which is just very interesting in that X costs 3, but yet these cards are like, you can only use this to negate an alien adversary. Yeah. Wind up being a little bit more expensive, but I guess, Mr. May, is that a situation where like the rarity of the cards makes the difference in the cost?
Again, final cost decisions. I don't know what they did, man. Andy, where are you?
They had 354 cards to sift through, and they had deadlines. So I think that's just the short end of it, is that they just wound up.
If you're seeing this, somebody complained. I don't know. Just, yeah.
Well, how many times do we, when we're doing the play testing of ours, we bounce around between 2, 3, 4? We're like, all right, well, maybe if we just you got 354 of these cards you got to push out. You're like, all right, we can't make them all 3. Let's make this one 4. Well, and make it a burn card. You can burn it.
That's true. Yeah.
So
you got to have that.
Think about that inquest. That inquest date, that was November, right? We say 96 was right, and it was still tentative. You're already at GenCon. You get it? And if you're selling a CCG and you're missing Christmas and you miss summer, you miss the con season, you're done. It's game over. So you're on the hot seat.
Chase card for this ultra rare, which it looks like the effect pretty much did remain intact. Of course, the upkeep wasn't obviously present for the alpha card because again the resource points weren't a factor. Well, the lone gunman may be turned in to add 1 point, but I guess that's the other point system that we're working with. So kind of sort of there was some degree of upkeep, but not to which we know it.
Hey, Steven, with the Langley that you just went by, did that also mention the whole weirdness with randomness?
Nope. Oh, yeah. It's the same. Yeah, sorry, I didn't call out anything particular because, the bluff to be discarded must be chosen randomly. Yep, just as it says on here.
Yeah.
No change. Yeah.
I still wish that would be stricken from the record. No,
I know.
Randomly, you can no.
Don't we all?
Takes that strategy right out of the game. All right.
So here's an instance of title changing. So the written report was originally creative writing.
And the quote is different as well.
Mm-hmm.
The quote is very much. Yeah, and it's actually from Fallen Angel, so not EBE as the rest of it is. So.
But I guess the quote makes more sense with the title creative writing because, Scully is not doing her journal.
All right. Okay, this is a weird question. How do you know immediately that a quote is from Fallen Angel?
Because I'm that good, Dave.
No, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you.
It's that. Okay, the quote was citing Max Fennig,
and
Max Fennig is in Fallen Angel.
Okay, quoting Max Fennig. But also,
he's the curator. He knows all.
Do not question.
Might not know what day it is.
It's like that little thing he pulls out of his head. It's just a big pile of circuitry.
Yeah, Dax is the collector. Steven is the curator.
I like that. That's a good title.
And I just put everything off, and I'm the procrastinator. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Everybody's got a role
like
to play.
3 or 4 copies of False Leads going on here. And my gosh, we do not see this card played often, and that's largely just because, God, that 8CP.
Yeah. It's still 8CP.
It's still 8CP, and and the effect is exactly as it is on. And actually, but it was going to be an ultra rare though, but it just wound up being a rare instead. And come to Plague of Locusts, which again, this is one of those overpriced CP cards that we just do not play. And I think again and also because Witnesses have largely gone as underrated, right, Dave? Dave?
Oh, yeah, me.
Dave will say
Dave. Yeah, my Witnesses, either I'm burning them or I now. Hey, Nathan has turned me on to Mrs. Mulder, and not in the weird way.
Thanks for clarifying.
Whatever. You were at Phil Fest. I know what happened.
I was at Phil Fest. What happens at Phil Fest stays at Phil Fest.
That's true.
You're the reason she didn't turn out for the Sunday.
I kept her up too late.
It's because Dave gave her COVID.
Hey, I'm not the one who had it.
So as I was mentioning earlier, the Truth Is Out There edition exclusive Taking Chances had a very different title.
Wow.
What was that?
Well, it's not as good as it tastes like chicken, but
yeah, that's true.
Dyslexic chicken?
Yeah, it's in the previous episode, it's the original title for the Good People, Good Food Adversary card.
Dyslexic chicken.
Yeah, that was a great. Mike, you didn't have what's his name? The actor who played Dr. Joe Ridley. His name's Robin
Mosley.
Robin Mosley. He didn't sign the Good People, Good Food card by any chance, did he?
No, at the time I was only aware that he was on that he was Ridley. Same with Kresge. I didn't know Kresge was on the SWAT training card. I would have sent some to him for that as well, but I just didn't know.
Gotcha. Because I mean, gosh, I really would have loved send him this playtest card. It tastes like chicken, and be like, yeah, just trust me, your image is on there.
Oh, it's funny. It tastes like chicken. I heard dyslexic chicken. And I'm like, that sounds like a rock band or something. No. That was my fault. But
dyslexic. We didn't stop you, Dave. It was like when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. We were just letting you go.
Well, there was a brain disease that was running rampant in that episode for which that adversary card is derived. So I guess you could maybe somehow find a way to work dyslexic chicken in the title, and it would make sense in a weird way.
Would that be crop?
We're going stir crazy now. I don't think any of us is drinking. What are we doing? I got coffee over here today.
I'm coffeeing it up, man.
Me too.
Yeah.
What's wrong with us?
And we are coming up to the halfway point for the event cards, and we're going to be seeing.
Look at Dave. He's just like, oh my god.
Look, Dave is saying that.
Both of us, I think. We both
of you guys.
Halfway.
There's a reason.
I don't know how Dave May can complain. It is only 10. It's only 10 o'clock where Dave May and Mike are right now.
I like the original evasive maneuver card. It's maybe more situational, but it's kind of fun.
A criminal investigation skill check of 2.
But for only one agent, though.
Yeah, for one agent, but still, I was like,
yeah, still. Yeah, it's
like you could almost make that.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them can make that.
It's unless you play that on Hosteen or Burke, and it's like, oh geez, you're kind of screwed at that point. And now we have the another promo card, and actually this one was going to be as the beta version says, was going to be an uncommon card. So alien technology from the Erlenmeyer flask, uncommon as of this point. But this required a skill check in its earliest iteration of Alien Investigation 5, whereas that obviously was vastly different by the time you get to the promo card here.
And on the previous card, you see that the use of activators and keywords allowed them to, have less lengthy game effects, because usually on the alpha version, it was like, play this card when you are the directed player and your opponent has just played something. And they were able to remove that with the activator and the different costs of the cards.
Yeah, and that goes back to what Mr. May was saying about just like trying to streamline it as much as possible. Yeah, because you had a lot of graphics, obviously, that wind up going into these cards. You got all these graphics that have to make it in there, so including, to say nothing of the flavor text. So you got to find a way to consolidate information to as small as possible. So I guess that's kind of where the keywords were kind of out of those. Was it possibly more out of necessity, Mr. May?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of both. I mean, it is to save the real estate, but we discovered that you could still get it all done and simplify, because a lot of the information is redundant.
And that is one of my favorite ones right there, of course, because I am usually, like Mike, I'm rocking an Alien Investigation themed deck.
Which, can we be completely honest here? That's not an Erlenmeyer flask.
Nope.
No, it's not. Yeah, there's no flask anywhere in this image at all. But I think they're just citing the episode title in it, even though, I agree with you. I've thought that from time to time. Mr. May, can I recall? Can we go down Can we talk about the assassinated card again? I have such fond memories of talking about it the first time I got to speak with you in person.
Yeah, I think there was a car accident.
So actually, there's one little bit of information on here that would have been actually good if it had made the final cut for this card. So one agent in the investigating team gains a permanent +1 to any one skill. In parentheses, it says his choice. So that actually would have been a little bit more helpful on the finalized card, because we often ask what skill. It doesn't say what skill, but it's like, nope, it's your choice. You choose which one. But now we have to infer that.
Yeah. Is it one of the skills that the agent already possess, or is it any skill? Like, could, I don't know, Scully have alien investigation, for instance?
I like to think when you buy the game, it's yours, and you can do whatever you want at that point. So, hey, Alien Investigation 1. Boom. We got a winner. Assassinate away.
Okay, so this is
but the internet
where
must
we
confirm.
Yeah.
You are the council now. There is no higher court of opinion.
So we have the backtracking program card, which in the end, it just wound up being a simple negate computer keyword card. That's it. But this card went through a bit of an evolution here. So the original alpha effect was a backtracking program card may be used to reverse another backtracking program card. And then we get to the beta version of it, which says reverse the effects of any one non-site card that uses computer skills in its description, i.e. an effect that would hinder you is applied to your opponent now. An effect that would help your opponent is applied to you instead. A backtracking program card may be used to reverse another backtracking program card. So, so I don't know if there's any other playtest cards that we didn't see, Mr. May, but did you encounter like the other backtracking program cards or or variation.
I get this is you could. So if I played the backtracking card because purple. And then I could play my backtracking card on your backtracking card to backtrack your backtrack. So now, if we can remember whose ever backtrack was last, that person in 2 turns will get a negative modifier. I think that's why we killed it.
I'm rubber, you're glue. I know you are, but what am I?
So how would that work? For instance, let's say I play as the investigating player. I play right wheel check to gain a +2, for instance. So if my opponent plays backtracking program, what does he actually gain?
Well, the theory is now that it's backtracked. So
is it -2 for me then?
-2, and then that returns though against him. So you have a -2. Yes, and if you backtrack, the question is, how does that affect your opponent if I backtrack the backtrack? Right?
Or if
does his next computer check get a -2? For all future computer checks get a negative after
how do you
I got my
keep track of that? And how do you keep track of that other than you just keeping a card on the table that's not a resource?
Or if you play like computer access denied.
Resource, it has. Here we go again with assassinated. Thanks. Now it's just going to sit there as a memorial in gameplay because we haven't invented printing proxies yet. So I'll have to put a token on my card as a reminder.
So I just had up the decreased workload card.
Yeah, so the original effect was different.
Yep, and also there's no misclassified case, which wound up using the same image. There's no playtest card for that, but that was an ultra rare for the Truth Is Out There edition. So again, probably a last minute change. But actually, GM, you mentioned it. The alpha version of this card, play this card on your turn in the deployment phase. Before deploying your agents, one team in the Bureau may choose any agent and make a Bureaucracy 4 skill check. If successful, the agent may draw a number of cards equal to his criminal investigation skill when investigating any site. This draw is in addition to the cards the agent is attached to normally draws for investigating a site. So yeah, making vaguely similar effect, but obviously they is this the one? No, I was thinking of. I think I'm thinking of one that involved resource points, right?
Yeah, it almost seems like when you send your team to investigate a site, if your agent has a criminal 3, you can draw 3 cards at the start of your investigation phase.
Yeah, an episode Little Green Men versus the host, it looks like.
Yeah, but
and here we come to 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, which I have 3 versions. I have 2 copies of the beta version here. Which one looks like it has a bit of looks like Mr. May was munching on Cheetos when playing with this card. But
awesome. Cardinal sin to eat Cheetos while playing with cards.
That makes it worth more.
It just went up in cost here. So this is the one I'm selling for thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Hey, somebody's going to genetically recreate Dave.
That's actual played card.
Yeah, played by the man himself. And actually, it looks like I see a bit of your fingerprint in here as well. So maybe I can
get the Cheeto smudge off.
As opposed to his fingerprints being on all the other cards. Anyway, now we're looking at 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 here. So his alpha version was a little bit more specific on when he can be played. It says, play this card during your turn whenever a team of agents is attempting a skill check. So you could not play it during anything other than the investigation phase. So if your opponent tried to hit you with a red tape in the briefing phase, 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 was not going to be able to get you out of that jam.
Or conceivably combat, right?
Well, if that's an investigation phase, combat he negates an event.
It's an event. Yeah, it's an event, not a combat card.
No, not a combat card. What I mean is a skill check would still technically be combat, right? Because long range and close range are a skill. So if somebody decided to play an event during combat, couldn't he negate that?
But you can't play an event during combat. You'd have to wait till combat was over.
Yeah. You can only play combat cards when combat's going on.
Only combat cards during combat.
And so the limitation on Frohickey was also present during the beta version of the card as well, but it ultimately got axed for
because we had a campaign. The Free Frohickey was a write-in. 32 playtesters signed the petition.
This was the cost of him dancing on the table. It's like, hey, you want to free your card? You got to do the dance, right?
That's why he signed up, wasn't it? Hey, if you want to come out here, we'll take your name off this game. You don't have to be on a card ever again. Get up there and dance, monkey.
I mean, that's why Byers got nerfed too, because he didn't decide to do the dance at all. He didn't decide to show up, period.
Yeah, going back to the previous one, you could see that there were several versions of the alpha cards that they provided an out for the investigating player by the investigating player making a skill check.
Skill check,
like,
yeah.
You know, like if you make a science skill check, then the government sanction is negated. And there was a previous one where you made an occult investigation skill check, and that also negated the conspiracy card.
And moving on to the application for FBI resources, there's some slight differences in this one as well. So you play this team on a team of agents during your turn to make a criminal investigation skill check of 6, as opposed to bureaucracy of 4. So yeah, but it's good that one got dialed down a little bit. But yeah, noticing a lot of times, because the cost of cards was different during alpha. So in a lot more of the alpha cards seemed to be dependent upon skill checks to make or break, whether that effect was going to get through.
And also, it was a purple card, but maybe that's a mistake.
Yeah. Which one? The
application for FBI resources.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. Because obviously, you're not going to be you're not going to be borrowing agents when you're the conspiracy player. The only time I could think to do that would be if, like, you borrow Patterson, right?
But if this was all before pre-Patterson.
Yeah. I know. I'm just trying to, like, shoehorn that in somehow. So here we have X. Yeah, and really, X was limited. Well, this is when, during the alpha version, the adversaries were called creatures at that point. It wasn't a keyword, but actually a card suit. And it was listed as a chase card as of this point. But by and large, not much in the way of an evolution to that one. It was pretty much from the get-go, it was going to do what originally intended.
Yeah.
And here we have the last of the 3 multiplayer cards, which at some point, I don't know, gentlemen, are any of you game for doing a multiplayer card or multiplayer game?
It might be hard. It's easier in person. It's very difficult in remote, because it's like, all right, unless you just type to me what you ask.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only thing, and I could go.
I don't know. We had what, 2.5 days at Phil Fest to play a multiplayer game, and every time, and it did get brought up a couple times, and every time it was like, maybe not.
Well, let's get another beer.
Yeah, hey, they're serving pizza upstairs now. Let's go.
And you have Dana Scully abducted here. And twice per game, she allows the controller player to search through the bureau deck and add any healing card. Yeah, so that's pretty much, that one is entirely unchanged. The skills, keyword believer, yep. So she's one of the few playtest cards from alpha to beta to final version, did not wind up getting a change at all. And so here we have the Road Hazard, one of the move cards, but or I guess an anti-move card, such as it is. So the alpha card says, play this card when you are the directed player to negate any card effect that has criminal investigation skill as a prerequisite.
So that's an evidence destroyed. No, not the evidence destroyed. That's the other one.
The local law enforcement is uncooperative,
Yes.
which I didn't have one for that one. So that's where that one wound up. Sorry, that one was off the screen a little bit there. So, and I also want to note that, there's going to be like some very like skill specific cards in very notable cards. We won't see that in this episode because we're only doing sites and events for this one. And I'm going to do one more episode where we're going to tackle the bluffs, equipment, and combat. And there's one particular bluff, GM, no spoilers, please, because I know you already know. There's one particular bluff that went from a notable change from being a terrible card to one of the very best cards.
I have a guess, but I'll be quiet.
Yeah, you can probably guess on that one. It's not. There's not too many of them that are universally not too many bluffs that are universally adored, and so also got 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, the double agent. Now this is just like the Skinner adopts the company line. It's just one of those situations where Mr. May, I don't know if you if it had come to everyone's understand, like when having these very agent-specific cards that would negatively affect the 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 or the Skinner on the opposing team, it's just so situational as to make the card just not desirable for deck building.
But again, it's not about the deck building. It's about the episode honoring the story. So back to the three buckets of balance, possibly. And again, I'm speaking out of turn, whatever was going through their head, but what we have discovered, right, when we're doing license development, I'm trying to capture or simulate the rebuilding, if you will, of the episodes, while still functioning as a collectible card game through resource management and card management or deck management. So having those boring search your deck for a card versus actually recreating the theme.
Mm-hmm.
So
Had to get creative from time to time. And
I'll check this out here. It could be entertaining if I could remember it, but I'm the guy that no one will know. I had the privilege later in life to work on pitches for, of course, Harry Potter. That one came out already because of Scooby-Doo, but we lost that one. But there was also at the same time Looney Tunes. So think about creating a collectible card game for that. Technically, Hercules and Xena was up in my lifetime. Notice I'm going to lose all these opportunities to some other company, Wizard something, I don't know, but because that last one was with C23. So it's just interesting when you're doing this license development. You're not just creating a collectible card game for the sake of creating a collectible card game. You're trying to match the tenor, tone, and theme of the product. So,
and we come to Safe House, which I want to point out also had a bit of an evolution from the beginning. So the original iteration of Safe House is that you play this card during your turn on any team of agents in the field that is about to enter combat. Make a subterfuge 4 skill check. If successful, the entire team is moved to the bureau, and the card that initiated the combat is negated.
It's
almost like a Skinner intervenes.
Yeah, but still, it's too. Yeah, I don't know, because now you're not there. You lose the site. You run away. I mean, it's great if you think you're worried about a team wipe. But other than that, it's very situational. I don't know if I'd ever play it.
you got to make that subterfuge skill check too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked it as much had it not been.
You'd also have Krychek on your team, odds are, if you're trying to make that subterfuge skill check. And Krychek is a beast. He will punch down a majority of adversaries anyway.
Yeah. So you'd have to be pretty unsure that your Krychek-led team is going to wind up getting massively hurt, because you're getting all of them are getting sent back to the Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
So the site's going to be lost.
Yep.
In that event.
This is still the weirdest one. Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah. Dark Forces Align.
And the alpha version of it said, play this card during your opponent's turn to allow any creature card to attack when it normally could not. Creatures normally restricted to the field are still restricted to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have no places safe earlier in this as well. And so here we have reading the signs, which obviously, because this is a card that ultimately winds up affecting resource and conspiracy points. So the original version of reading the signs was, play this card during your turn on a team of agents in the field. If the team successfully makes an occult investigation skill check of 3, not 4, they may add +1 to any skill check results that involve occult investigation or occult attacking creatures this turn. A little too niche for your taste, right? Right, Dave? A little too situational?
Oh, yeah. And that way? Yeah, I think so. I like it as is.
Yeah, I do too. And a lot. I think most of us can concur on that. And so we come to Chester Bonaparte promo, although in the beta version it was slated as a rare. So no real change in this card's evolution, other than maybe the cost of 4 here was eventually up to 5 there. But by and large, still the same for that 96 promo. Now we have Warning from the Loa. And yep, other than this, that it references the creature suit as opposed to the adversary one. And Dave, you like this card, aren't you? You're a fan of the decoy.
I use decoy a lot with my Krychek decks.
Yep, and this one is pretty much the same from the get-go as well. No real change. Subterfuge 4 skill check. Yeah, you're going to want that on a Krychek-led team. This is where that card's
I'll send Krychek to a mono site and then try to decoy, use exactly what the card says to draw someone into fighting him, and then decoy him and negate.
And I just like the way the alpha card says, this is a healing card.
Healing card. Yeah, it also said that on the Agent in the Hospital, the previous one that we saw. Yeah, I thought that was funny, yeah.
And here's the last of the agent-specific killer cards there. So Agent Weiss, yep, getting owned. Chase card, once again. And we come to Surfing.
All of those hero cards had an exclamation point in their title originally.
Yeah, and in the end, are there any cards? I should know this. Are there any cards, 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬, that have an exclamation point in their final printed version? I believe there is one. I think there's one.
I know that we have at least one in our custom cards, but in the commercially released ones.
Yeah. Watch out.
Yes.
Guys.
Yeah.
I believe you're right. Yes.
Well, Run for It does too. Take cover.
Oh yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. We won't those tonight. We're gonna get.
Oh, the old GenCon. The old GenCon Abduction did.
Oh, the GenCon one. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
and
you're right. The
Turn Around, which is a community card.
And we are nearing the end here. There's only a small handful of them left, but there's a couple of notable ones that we'll see as we get to the bottom of these. We now have Skinner chooses.
You know it was way more restrictive. Like it said that you could not play the Witness again until you shuffled your deck on the alpha version of Clone. So it was way more restrictive than it turned out to be.
Yeah, and an alien investigation 4 skill check was necessary as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says place the witness in the back of the deck so you can be reminded.
Yeah, considering how little affection that witnesses get, it's good to remove as many restrictions as possible. I also want to point out that the street contacts card, since we're talking about witnesses, as you might have noted when I had the street contacts card up, it also called for like a criminal investigation 5 skill check in order to get that witness, as opposed to just being able to go in and fish out that
one
witness.
and get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so a little less desirable.
This is the one that I don't ever understand. This is the one I was thinking about earlier with Dark Forces. I don't like this one ever.
And its effect really is not is unchanged.
It's three adversary cards at once. Yeah.
Maybe it made more sense in the alpha version when you did not have to pay for cards.
I think so.
So here's a notable one, and Mike, you mentioned this one at the start of the broadcast. We have hack into government files. There is something to note on the alpha version of this card. So hack into government files, by and large, fairly
4 cards per deck.
Yeah. If successful, you may select any card in your collection, add it to your hand. The card need not be part of your bureau deck, nor may it exceed the limit of 4 cards per deck.
We used to be 4 cards versus 2.
Is that right, Mr. May?
4 cards?
Yeah, Jesus.
That's how Rumor had it.
See, I could see that. Now that was the reason to be banned right there. Sorry, Dave. What was that?
That's Magic. Magic's got the 4 limit.
Not to mention it had the flash activator on it as well.
Well, they were looking for the word. The word didn't exist back then, to my knowledge.
Oh, for Flash, yeah.
So they were ahead of their time. They were creating language that they didn't even know. They didn't even exist. They were so far ahead of their time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we come to. Well, I'm gonna skip this next one just real quick because we just have the last of the training cards here, but unremarkable. Other than, as I said previously, removing the agent for 2 turns as opposed to 1, cost of 3 reduced to 2. So that's the last of the training cards.
Different title and different quote though. So
different titles,
and different quote. Yeah, it might have been originally from another episode.
Yeah, it's from Squeeze actually. Yeah, no episode listed, but the quote is from Squeeze. Yes, Mike, I'm that good. And so now we come to Deny Everything. Again, no alpha card because it's a 97 promo, and the effect is exactly as it's on the card. Promo, 8 CP. Everything is everything is the same on here. But there it is, the playtest version of that, and we're down to the final card, gentlemen, the last one. But basically, wait, did we get through all of season 2? Yeah, we did. So there's 1 card left, and it's from the 1013 expansion, and that is the ultra rare version of Near-Death Experience. Had a bit of a longer title.
It's exclamation point.
Yeah, exclamation point once again. So So actually, this is the alpha version. Do I have the? Yeah, sorry, I do have the beta version as well. So yeah, Fox Mulder has a Near-Death Experience chase card. 3 CP as opposed to the 4 when all is said and done, and slight difference in the last part of it. I think so. A failed guess will not allow your opponent to ask a penalty question. No, same effect, just worded a little bit differently. I wish the cost would have stayed at 3 RP because Dana Scully abducted and Skinner chooses a side cost 3, and so these are all those very agents ultra rare, so I don't see why this one should have had a 4, but I think that was also the case for Krychek Possessed as well. But gentlemen, that is it. So I do want to thank you guys for availing the 2.5 hours of your evening to go through these sites and events. So any final thoughts as you judge all those variations of all these cards we went through?
Guess no.
When are you gonna crack that pack, Steven?
Oh, I do have it right here. But
Yeah, you love me, don't you, Dave?
But Mike, you requested that we do that on Matt and Mike's X-Files CCG, so I will be saving it.
I still have that too. It's the only one I have. I don't have like 8 million like Nathan and John, but it's holy cow. That's all I got left.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how many unopened boxes Jonathan actually has, because whenever I see the buy sell channel part of the Discord, I'm like, he has bought like booster packs and star decks, and I'd be curious to see what his basement or storage room looks like.
I've sold some man's kidney to go ahead and get myself a box of this stuff. Not just one, a box of cases. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, as you say that about Jonathan, I want to also thank Jonathan 𝐗-𝐅i𝐥e𝐬 very much for sending me all of these booster packs. I got 5 1013 and 7 Truth is, or no, sorry, 5 Truth is Out There edition, 7 1013 edition booster packs, and Jonathan and I are going to be cracking open some of these in addition to a Premier starter deck Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're doing a sealed deck game. This is the second time Jonathan and I have done a sealed deck game on the channel. However, we're changing up ever so slightly in that, in addition to being a sealed deck game, it will also be we'll also be using the X-Files powers rules for that. We have not done a sealed game with power rules, so we're gonna try that out. Jonathan's actually never played X-File powers prior to this, so this will be his first attempt at that as well. So we'll see how that goes. So again, 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Alien Investigations. Check that out, and please hit that subscribe button. And we are about to shut the door to this X-Files office for the evening. Gentlemen, do you have any parting words before we call it a night?
And thank you for sharing all of those cards. It's amazing.
Thank you, Dave May.
Latu Vrata Nitu.
Just a miracle the box survived. Thousands of miles, fires, who knows?
War, famine,
mosquitoes,
dogs and cats living together.
That's hysteria.
There it is.
Chaos.
And with that, we'll say good night. And please be sure to tune in for another edition of Alien Investigations. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and good night. And we are out. Thank you.